Okay, so a lot has been happening here on the farm. I was planning to make separate videos for each thing, but there's just too much going on. So instead, here's a proper update as we approach the 3-month mark. We left Australia to start farming here in the Philippines with very little experience. 3 months later, we're still here and going strong. The plans have been shifting and evolving, but we're still on the main track. I'll explain some of those changes as we go. Goats were always a major part of the plan. Originally we were aiming for somewhere between 10 and 15 goats. Well, my wife Jenny came and told me she'd bought another 10. These are mostly Nubian goats, 9 does and 1 Nubian buck. That brings our total herd to 20 goats. We now have 2 bucks, the new Nubian and our original Boer-cross. The Boer-cross is mainly for meat, while the Nubians are better for milking. So it looks like we might have to learn how to milk a goat. We put up the electric fence about a week ago. At first, I tried to do the least amount of work possible, just enough to keep the goats in. That was a mistake. The goats needed clear, consistent boundaries so they could actually learn where the fence was. If there were gaps, or the bottom wire was too high, they would just go under it. We ended up adding a lot more posts and lowering the bottom wire. It turns out the low wire is the most important part. Once we fixed that, the escape stopped. With our original 10 goats, they were getting out about 5 times a day. Now with 20 goats, we haven't had a single escape. The goats have learnt the fence quickly. It seems they need to get zapped 3 or 4 times before they really understand it. This first paddock has a perimeter of about 400 meters, and now they're happily grazing inside it. The sorghum is still growing. I haven't fertilized it or sprayed anything. I'm hoping it will work as both goat feed and chicken feed, but I've never grown it before, so we're really just experimenting. The idea is to harvest it, feed it to the goats, and let it regrow as long as we get enough rain. It's rainy season now, so it's doing okay, but I'm not sure how it'll handle the dry season. Sorghum is really just a filler crop. The main feed we're trying to establish is super Napier grass. This is the plant that should let us scale up the goat herd properly. It grows fast, but it still takes about 3 months from cutting to being big enough to take more cuttings from. Right now, ours is still too young. One of my biggest concerns is having enough feed for the goats during the upcoming dry season. We still have 5 terraces that haven't been planted yet, and those will be important. One of the bottom terraces is already growing a lot of kangkong, which the goats love. We've also planted around 30 moringa cuttings, and they're starting to shoot. Moringa is excellent goat feed. On the help side, Jenny's brother has started working with us on the farm. He's been having fun with the hand tractor, getting more terraces ready for planting. We've also put in some corn, both Balinese corn and a dent corn variety for livestock. These are just small test plantings for now. If they do well, we'll save the seed for the next crop. We've planted sunflowers around the edges to help with insects and avoid a full monoculture. We've also tried some pigeon peas and a sorghum and bean mix, though it's still early days. My first attempts at planting sorghum were a bit rough. It went in too clumpy. I also planted some forage sorghum with smaller seeds, and that actually germinated really well. I put in some millet too. I'm still figuring out what grows best here, but grass seems like the strongest option. That's why I'm focusing on sorghum, millet, and especially Napier grass. Napier is one of the few plants that stays green through the dry season. There's been a lot of grass cutting, clearing weeds so the grass can come through, keeping the fence line clean, and cutting around the edges of the terraces. The usual practice here is to burn everything that the animals don't eat, but I'm trying to avoid that. I want to get as much biomass back into the soil as possible, and keep living plants in the ground year-round. One of the biggest changes in our plans is that we've decided to hold off on building a big chicken house for now. When I ran the numbers, it looks like focusing on the goats will be more profitable long term. We'll still start with chickens, but on a much smaller scale to begin with. I'm constantly running the numbers on what makes the most sense for this farm. Right now, goats are coming out on top. I'll explain why in more detail in a future video. But that's all for now. Catch you next time.